From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
All right, order has been restored. I love it. Don't get me wrong, please. I think it's great. You know, sometimes Sunday school and Sunday school classes and Sunday school children and so forth provide lots of good material. And so let me tell you a little story. There was a Sunday school teacher who was teaching her class about the difference between right and wrong. And she said, all right, children, let's take an example here. She said, if I were to get into a man's pocket and take his billfold with all his money, what would I be? And a little boy named Howard, the pastor's son, raised his hand and was quite confident, with a smile on his face. He blurted out, "You'd be his wife." Now, I have to go home, and I don't know if this is the right or wrong answer, but I'm just reporting on a story. So, anyway. You know, I always try to remember that, you know, we are all different and we are all the same at the same time. We are all different in some degree because we, you know, in personality and knowledge, histories, culture, family, interests, past experiences, conditioning, our individual consciousness, all of that. Be different. But we're all the same in that we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. We're all children of one God, and we all have the same Spirit of God that is within us. We share that. We're all part of the human family. We all want to be loved and need to be loved and to love. And we're here to be a light in the world, and we're here to bring some form of goodness of God on into the world. And so one of the things we all have in common is that we're here to learn to love and to add love to the world. And if there was one word to be used to define God, that word is love, right? And so also one of the universal principles that Jesus taught us was to give. And he said, "Give and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, running over." Powerful way that he spoke of that. And when people hear the word give, especially in church, then they think the next move is to money, you know, and many places it can be that. But giving can mean many things, as you know. There's the gift of giving can mean giving of time, of talent, the gift of your presence, the gift of listening, the gift of helping, the gift of serving in some way. And one of the things that most people seem to search for at some point in time in their life is a sense of purpose and meaning in their life, a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. And of course, who among us at the end of their life would not like to have a feeling that our life stood for something meaningful and helpful that made a contribution, and our life was a contribution, and the world is a better place for us having been in it. You know, that somewhere, somehow we made a difference, at least for someone, or maybe many someones. And out of that, there was a richness and a fullness that came to us, a great feeling, and a connection as well. From living from that contribution we felt that we were making, that we were a plus on the planet, so to speak. And so if we look at some of the people that we admire down through time, that really stand out for their service to humanity and the difference they made, to fellow man, there would be people like Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Dr. Martin Luther King, and you can think of others as well. And it doesn't mean that these people were all perfect. It doesn't mean that they didn't have any flaws. It just means that we had come to know them because they had a belief that there was an area where people in humanity could be helped. There was a need and they wanted to meet it. There was an awareness of something that could be done to make the world a better place, and they had a passion to do it, and that was their mission. And it was an expansiveness within them. There was something that made them bigger than real life in saying yes to that something inside of themselves. They clearly felt guided. They clearly were connected to God. They clearly were coming from their heart, from a love of God, and were seeing themselves as instruments of God. Very much as St. Francis' prayer, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Make me an instrument of your love. Let me sow love. Let me sow hope. Let me sow faith. Let me sow light. Let me sow joy. That whole prayer was about sowing seeds wherever they needed to be, where they didn't exist. And so we may not always see the fruits of our labors or the fruits of the seeds that we've planted in our life, because sometimes it takes a while for them to come to fruition and to see the harvest. Like Dr. Martin Luther King, he didn't get to see so much of the seeds, the harvest of the seeds that he put in place. The very idea of being in service to others and of being a servant of good, it's really not so much the act itself as it is the state of consciousness that a person brings. Getting to that place where there is something that is moving in them that feels a connection to the rest of humanity and wants in some way to offer something coming from them. When we look at the life of Jesus, Jesus was really always demonstrating the idea of being a servant and a passionate servant of God. And he sought to teach us this as well. There's many, many passages really that make it very clear that he saw this as a very important aspect of a person's walk, their journey, their path in life. He talked about things like, sowing seeds, the parable of the sower, and he talked about forgiveness and bringing love and planting seeds of love and pardoned the adulteress. He taught about giving, as we've said, and he said that we were to be a light in the world and help bring light where there is darkness. And something we should all realize, I believe, is that every one of us is in service. We're already serving. You understand that? We're already, every one of us. No one is excluded. The defining question is who? Who do I serve? We have to ask ourselves that, because all of us are already serving ourselves, for sure, to some degree. It's human nature. You have to, in order to stay alive, you're going to have to serve yourself in some way. We all have needs, and we are looking to be guided to the appropriate and healthy ways to meet those needs that we have, but also to stay in some kind of a balance. So we have to ask ourselves if we are serving anyone else, anywhere else beyond ourselves. That's an important question. And the distinction is not you're good or bad in the answer. The distinction is how much you are aware of the quality that, and the fulfillment and the satisfaction and the enhancement that can come to one's life, the sense of meaning and purpose that one may be missing if the focus is totally on oneself and there isn't a balancing of looking for where one can offer the gift that they bring. It puts you into the bigger collective picture of the whole, of who we are. And, it was Ralph Waldo Emerson that said, "It is one of the most beautiful compensations of life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself." You see, there is a reciprocal payback. It's not why we do it, but there just is. It's built into it. He's saying that because he knows that, we're actually all one. And in serving, as I help you, I'm helping myself. And as you go higher, I go higher. And it's the way that Jesus put it was, if I be lifted up, I draw all men unto me. There's an action. And there are other things that Jesus said that were really important around this idea of being of service on your path. We all know about the Lord's Supper, and that is found in several places, but in the Gospel of John, after they have had the Lord's Supper, it tells us in the passage there that Jesus rose up and went and poured some water in a basin, and then he took a towel and he began to wash the disciples' feet and then wiped them with a towel. And when Jesus came to Peter, Peter resisted. Peter resisted because basically his perception of things was that Jesus is above and he was beneath, and this wasn't right. And so Peter said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? You shall never wash my feet. It's right there in the passage. And Jesus says, if I don't wash yours or serve you, you have no part of me, no part with me. In other words, it's what connects us. Don't give me this distant stuff of I'm above and you're beneath and all that. We are one. It's what this is about. It's what the message is. Get beyond this uppity and downity stuff. Hadn't heard that before, had you? The point is, for those whom you serve, you become one. For those whom you serve, you become one. A couple verses later, Jesus says, if I, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. In other words, he was saying, I'm modeling for you. I'm demonstrating for you. He wasn't saying, do as I say. He was saying, do as I do. I just did this. And we all need to do that. That no one is beneath you and no one is above you as a servant of God. And it's important to know. That was his message. And then he said, he that receives me receives him that sent me. In other words, he who is willing to receive what I have to offer and serve you with, you see, receives, basically puts them in a position of being a servant themselves and moving into a Christ or level of Christ consciousness, which is the foundation of oneness. And then there is this passage in Luke also where we find there is a dispute that went on, and it was among the disciples, and it was in regard to who was the greatest. You remember that, right? Who was the greatest? And so that's typical of, personality, weighing, measuring, judging, all of that. And they still had some of that going on. And Jesus' response was, and he said just like this, quote right out of Luke, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over others, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. In other words, well, let's go on to what he said next. Then he asks this to clarify what he was saying. He said, for which is greater, one who sits at the table or one who serves? Or one who serves who is sitting at the table. And he says, is it not typically the one who sits at the table, that is served? Well, he said, I am among you as one who serves. And what he's saying is, I'm not here to sit at the table and be served. That's not what it's about. I'm here to serve. That's what the path is about. So he goes to all these great lengths talking about these things, making it clear to his disciples, to his students, those who are waking up to what their mission and work is in the world and their path. And that he was being a model and an example of trying to clarify that and bring the importance of it. There's a man named Albert Pike, and he said a wonderful, amazing thing that just goes deep in terms of this idea that we're talking about. What he said is that what we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. And what we have done for others and the world remains and is immortal. Immortal. Mother Teresa tells about a time in her work in Calcutta, and they had picked up a young orphan boy whose mother had died. And she had come from a good family, but things had happened and circumstances in her life. She died. The child was an orphan, and Mother Teresa brought him in. The boy grew up, and as he grew up, he wanted to be a priest. And when he reached adulthood and was asked why he wanted to become a priest, his answer was, I want to do for other children what Mother Teresa has done for me. And I want to love as she has loved me. And I want to serve as she has served me. In other words, the impact of observing this being called Mother Teresa so impacted him that it just reached into his heart and grabbed that part of his soul that said, this is really a lot about what this is about, this life. And so he went on to be a priest devoted to loving service and helping those who never really felt loved, never felt the warmth of human touch, or a kindness even of a smile there in Calcutta. And you get to see how being of service with love to one child expanded into literally hundreds and probably thousands that were served by the love of this priest during the course of his lifetime of service. And so it's a kind of a pay it forward. We're always planting seeds. We may not see the harvest even of the seeds, but they're there because they're eternal, they're immortal. So this idea of really planting seeds, some of you may or may not have heard the idea, I love this, you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the apples in a seed. Okay? We're here to plant some seeds that will benefit the whole, not just ourselves. That's a process, that's a growth process for anybody. Most of us are so conditioned in this fast-moving, rapid world that we're in that we get thrust into its speed and end up on the fast track, and it's like we're riding through life on this fast train, and many of the things or everything we're experiencing is like a blur, and we ourselves are a blur, and we're not really taking anything in. It's just a blur. And when I was a head usher in Milwaukee, at my church there, when I was a young man, before I went into the ministry, I was the head usher. And I was also on the board for a time. It was a great experience for me. But the makeup of the sanctuary there was one door you had to go through to get into the sanctuary. And so everyone had to pass by me. And so I got to see everyone, and I would hand them a hymnal because we had to put the hymnals out and then take them back because we were renting a facility there. And I'd give them a program. And got to know lots of people as an usher like that. And the hardest people to get to know tended to be those who blew in and blew out, like a fast train. And they were usually the last to arrive and the first to leave. And you never got to know them. And many of them didn't even stay for the peace song, or the whole service, Doesn't make them bad. Doesn't make anybody bad here. It was sad. It was sad. It's like, wow, just jumping in and out. Maybe they had a job to go to, but maybe they didn't realize the gift of their presence. That's something to give. It doesn't cost. Just the presence to be there. And sometimes, as psychologists have said, the speed by which a person lives sometimes is a mask for wanting to keep a safe distance, not wanting to be vulnerable to anything, not wanting, just tending to dip your toe into the experience, but never really throw your whole self into things. I don't know, everything we do or don't do, we have a reason. It's a part of our individual makeup, our history, things that we've been through, things we've observed, modeled for us, things like that. So again, not right or wrong, but the key is know thyself. Why am I doing what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, so forth. Know thyself. We must do more than think what we know. Only by living it can love show. And so sometimes it takes courage for us to live what we know. We know it and we know it, but then certain things take courage to actually step out and do it. There's a wonderful story about true story about a man named Wu Feng. And he was a Manchurian diplomat of the 1700s who was placed with an Aboriginal tribe in the outskirts of Taiwan. So you get this is in the 1700s, and he is with this Aboriginal tribe. And Wu Feng was a quiet man, he was a gentleman, and he quickly developed a relationship with the Aborigine chief. And the primitive practice back in the 1700s at that time in this particular group was that they would behead one of its members every year at a particular time as a form of sacrifice. And so each year Wu Feng would plead with all his compassion for the life of this individual and try and plead with the chief to put an end to this practice and this custom. And the chief would politely listen and then after listening and bowing, the chief would summon the chosen tribe member and without hesitation behead him. And so this went on year after year, and Wu Feng was trying to change this. And finally, after living with the tribe for 25 years, Wu Feng, pleading his case, once more, they were about to enter into this process, but this time, when the tribe member who was called forth to be beheaded came forth, Wu Feng pushed him aside and stepped in front of the chief and took his place and said, "If you will kill this time, it will be me." And the chief just stared into the eyes of Wu Feng for a long time, his friend for many years, having grown to love Wu Feng. And he could not kill him. And from that day, the practice of beheading stopped. Now, naturally, Wu Feng, he could have been killed. And yet his courage came to him, and it shows that at some point, how we live inside must win in its importance. How we live inside has to take a priority at some point. And so we have to ask ourselves, in many ways, do we bring our bodies only, our physical selves only, our physical presence only, or do we bring our soul's presence to an experience? How deeply do we feel life? How deeply are we feeling experiences in life? Is it a blur? Are we riding a fast train? Have we unconsciously been swept up into a speed where we no longer are able to really be present in the moment and everything is a toe dip instead of an all-out, wow, I want to feel all of this song, this music, this prayer, this experience, A few years ago, a young lady in our congregation had to write an essay as part of her application for college, and it was part of the application. Only 25% of the people, or the applicants, were being accepted. It was a college in New York. So she decided to write about her experience in serving others in her volunteer role here at our bookstore. It was a few years ago. And here's what she wrote. It's beautiful. As many things we were talking about, she got at 18. She wrote this: "A few years ago, I felt a need to give back to the community and to help people. I tried many things, like working at food banks and clothing drives, but I didn't feel fulfilled. It felt good to be helping the community and improving people's lives, but it was still too distant. I wasn't meeting the people I was helping, and I didn't feel any real connection with them. I looked around for other options for a while. Then one day I saw a message on my church bulletin: volunteers needed. I go to a fairly large church, and we have our own volunteer-run spiritual bookstore, which does a reasonable good business every Sunday and on weekdays, and our bookstore is a big part of church life. Many people see it as a place to mingle after the service or to find that perfect gift for a friend or loved one. I saw the bookstore as the ideal opportunity to give back to the community, which had really touched me, and to reach out and touch more people. I spoke with the volunteer coordinator as soon as I could and started working every other Sunday. I've been working for the past 3 years, and I even started working on weekdays and during the summer. I get such an amazing sense of fulfillment dealing with the people in the store, even if it's just greeting them or helping them find a book. We occasionally get people in the store who just want someone to talk to or who need some spiritual guidance. I love talking to these people, helping them to find a book that'll help or inspire them. And I feel so grateful to be part of something which touches so many people's lives on such a personal level. The staff has become another family to me, and I love going to help on weekday afternoons, making phone calls, stocking the shelves. We have a group of regulars who come in every Sunday, and I feel a connection with all of them. And through my experiences in the bookstore, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned that I need to do something with my life that will let me help as many people as I can on a personal level. I need to give back and be an important part of the community. I feel that the last 3 years I've spent working in the bookstore have impacted my life in a phenomenal way, and they've made me want to impact other people's lives in any way that I can. She was accepted, and she has completed, actually, and graduated with honors. Her name is Casey Rice. She's the daughter of Patty Rice, who's a board member on in our ministry here and just completed 2 terms. She's also the granddaughter of Reverend Farrellyn Mann. So they're all very, very proud. But she graduated with honors and is now getting her master's degree at another New York university. So this was just a few years ago. But there are, it's a great letter. It speaks so beautifully and says how fulfilling and meaningful it can be. And there are lots of places in the world to serve. And I know many of you are already serving in various places. There's lots of organizations throughout Houston and around. Many of you are serving here in this ministry, and it's all great. One role that I think that our ministry is filling is that it is like a spiritual hospital, We're here to help each other heal the wounds of our past and become whole again. We're here to repair what is broken or seemingly was broken in our lives and come on back into a happy and healthy and free kind of experience of life again, remembering who we are. Together we are all really the doctors and nurses, that through service to each other, we bring the ointment of love and acceptance. And so, there was a dear friend of mine, Lillian Desjardins. Her and her husband, Jill, were the co-directors of the Pavilion, a recovery center in North Carolina, previously in Canada. And she lost her husband, Jill, but Lillian is now in her mid-70s, and Diane and I had breakfast with her when I spoke in Austin last week. She is still meeting with people individually and small groups. This lady is a master at helping see what's going on for a person and helping them shift. She's been doing it all her life. She can take you there in a heartbeat. And it's so beautiful that she's continuing. And anyway, the thing that I share with you is that she said, oh yes, she said, my prayer is always, God, lead me where you need me. Lead me where you need me, God. Lead me where you need me. Let that be our prayer. Lead me where you need me, God. Lead me where you need me. And have the courage to make that a priority and follow what that inner leading might be. Remember, what we have done for ourselves alone dies with us, but what we have done for others and the world remains and is immortal. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.
Are you currently church shopping, looking for that right church for you or your family? Perhaps you've been looking and been turned off by organized religion. It happens. Let me suggest you try Unity Church. We are a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity. Many who have found us have said, I didn't know there was a church that taught what I always believed. Let's be honest, people shop for clothes, good restaurants, and the right church that feeds them spiritually. If you're seeking a spiritual truth beyond tradition, try Unity Church. Come join us.